The red sun peeked over the horizon, casting long shadows across New Eden's sprawling farmlands. The gentle hum of machinery filled the air as automated harvesters worked their way through fields of golden wheat. In the central monitoring station, Park Ji-won sat at his desk, his eyes fixed on the holographic displays showing atmospheric readings. Ji-won took a sip of his morning coffee, noting with satisfaction that oxygen levels had stabilized at Earth normal levels. After 10 years of careful terraforming, New Eden was finally beginning to feel like home. The colony had grown from a few thousand brave pioneers to a thriving civilization of 5 million souls. Through the station's panoramic windows, he could see children walking to school, their laughter carrying across the carefully manicured parks. Workers headed to the manufacturing districts, while researchers made their way to the science complexes. It was just another peaceful morning on humanity's most successful extrasolar colony. A soft chime from his console drew his attention. The reading seemed odd. Multiple gravitational disturbances in the upper atmosphere. He was about to run a diagnostic when the emergency alarm began blaring throughout the colony. Kim Da-hyun's voice crackled over the public address system, tight with barely controlled panic. Multiple unknown vessels dropping out of FTL. This is not a drill. All citizens proceed to emergency shelters immediately. Ji-won rushed to the window just as the first ships appeared. They seemed to materialize from thin air, their crystalline hulls as dark as the space they emerged from. The vessels were massive, each one easily the size of the colony's largest habitat dome. Their design was completely alien, all sharp angles and geometric patterns that hurt the eyes to look at. Status report. Ji-won called into his communicator as he ran toward the emergency command center. What are we dealing with? Unknown configuration. Da-hyun responded, his voice now shaking. No match in any database. They're not responding to hails. Wait, they're powering up weapons. The first plasma bolt struck the colony's main shield generator with devastating force. The protective barrier, designed to handle meteor strikes and solar radiation, flickered and died. More bolts followed, each one finding a critical target with terrifying precision. Ji-won reached the command center just as Lee Hae-jin, the colony's governor, was activating the quantum communicator. Her fingers flew over the controls as explosions rocked the building. This is Governor Lee Hae-jin of New Eden Colony. She spoke clearly despite the chaos around her. We are under attack by unknown hostile forces. This is a civilian colony. We have no military defenses. Please send. The transmission cut off as a direct hit destroyed the communications array. Through the command center's windows, Ji-won watched in horror as the alien ships methodically began destroying everything humans had built. Their weapons carved through buildings like they were made of paper. People ran screaming through the streets as habitat domes shattered. The carefully maintained atmosphere began to leak away. Agricultural complexes burned, 10 years of crops reduced to ash in moments. The manufacturing district collapsed as precision strikes hit load-bearing structures. They're targeting life support systems, Da-hyun reported numbly. Oxygen generators, water purification, power plants. They know exactly where to hit us. One by one, the emergency shelters were breached. Ji-won could only watch as the population counter on his display dropped rapidly. 5 million lives being systematically extinguished. The aliens, the Vracnid, as humanity would later learn to call them, were thorough in their destruction. They didn't just destroy the colony. They erased every trace of human presence on New Eden. By the time the last ship departed, nothing remained but smoking craters and twisted metal. In the command center, as the air grew thin and alarms blared warnings of imminent atmospheric collapse, Ji-won recorded one final log entry. They came without warning, without mercy, without reason. If anyone finds this, remember us, and make them pay. The message ended there. When Earth's ships finally arrived weeks later, they found only ruins and radiation. New Eden, humanity's pride and hope for the future, had been wiped from existence in less than 6 hours. But the Vrachnid had made a fatal mistake. They thought they were eliminating a defenseless colony. Instead, they had awakened a sleeping giant, and humanity's response would shake the very foundations of the galaxy. The emergency meeting hall of the United Earth government was silent except for the soft hum of air circulators. 3,000 representatives from Earth's nations sat in the curved rows of seats, their faces illuminated by the soft blue glow of data screens. None of them had slept since receiving the quantum transmission from New Eden. Admiral Kane Minho stood at the central podium, his dress uniform pristine, his face showing the weight of the knowledge he carried. Behind him, massive screens displayed the last images from New Eden: burning buildings, shattered domes, and streets filled with bodies. The satellite footage played in a loop, a testament to humanity's first encounter with alien hostility. The attack began at 6:27 New Eden local time. He began, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. Within 6 hours, 5 million civilians were dead. The colony was not just destroyed, it was erased. He paused, letting the horror of those words sink in. But we are not helpless. We have never been helpless. With a gesture, he activated the holographic display system. The air above the assembly filled with light as a three-dimensional map of the solar system materialized. Red dots began appearing. First a few, then dozens, then hundreds and thousands, spreading across Earth and reaching out to the furthest planets. Project Guardian, Minho continued, began 200 years ago, when we first detected possible alien radio signals. Our ancestors understood that humanity's survival might one day depend on our ability to defend ourselves. They began preparing in secret, and every generation since has contributed to this effort. The hologram zoomed in on Earth, showing vast underground complexes beneath every continent. Massive shipyards hidden under the oceans, assembly plants buried deep within mountains. Each facility was a city in itself, dedicated to building and maintaining humanity's hidden fleet. 700,000 warships, Minho announced, each one equipped with technology centuries ahead of what the public knows exists. Quantum drives capable of crossing galaxies, weapons that can crack planets, defense systems that can withstand the heat of a sun. The assembly erupted in shocked whispers. Representative Kim Jin-young from Korea stood up. How was this kept secret for so long? Because everyone in this room had ancestors who helped build it, Minho replied. Your great-grandparents, your grandparents, your parents, they all knew that someday humanity would face a threat like this. They sacrificed, they worked in secret, they dedicated their lives to preparing for this moment. The hologram shifted to show a single ship in detail, 2 kilometers long, its hull covered in weapons ports and sensor arrays. The Defender-class battleship, Minho explained. We have 50,000 of these. The Vengeance-class carriers, 100,000. The Swift-class destroyers, 300,000. Support ships, medical vessels, repair craft, all waiting for the order to deploy. President Park Sung-min rose from her seat, her face set with determination. She looked out at the assembly, at the representatives of every nation on Earth. In that moment, she carried the weight of not just 5 million dead colonists, but of humanity's future itself. We built these ships hoping we would never need them, she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the hall. We hid our strength because we wanted peace. But now, she turned to Admiral Minho. How long to have the fleet ready? 24 hours to bring all ships to full activation. Another 48 to assemble the battle groups. The crews have been training their entire lives for this. They can deploy immediately. President Park nodded. She looked once more at the images of New Eden's destruction, at the alien ships systematically erasing human life from the colony. When she spoke again, her voice was steel. Activate the Earth Defense Force. All of it. Send the call to every hidden base, every underground facility, every secret shipyard. Today, humanity shows its teeth. Throughout the solar system, Lights began coming on in hidden facilities. Massive doors opened in the sides of mountains. The ocean floor split to reveal shipyards larger than cities. On Mars, on Venus, in the asteroid belt, humanity's secret arsenal awakened. In training bases across Earth, millions of crew members received the call they had spent their lives preparing for. They moved with practiced precision, boarding ships they had trained on in simulators since childhood. The greatest military force ever assembled was about to reveal itself, and the aliens who had destroyed New Eden would learn why humanity had been feared even when it was unknown. The waters of the Mariana Trench churned as something massive stirred in its depths. Marine life scattered as the ocean floor began to split apart, revealing gleaming metal beneath centuries of carefully maintained camouflage. From Earth's deepest point, humanity's greatest secret emerged into the light. The EDF Vengeance rose first, water cascading from its 2-kilometer length like a waterfall. Its black hull, designed to absorb both energy and detection signals, reflected nothing of the sun's light. Behind it came others, hundreds, then thousands of warships, their emergence turning the Pacific Ocean into foam. Captain Kim Yuna stood on the Vengeance's bridge, watching through the main viewport as more ships joined the formation. She had commanded this vessel for 15 years, but only in simulations. Now, with real stars shining through real space, everything felt different. "Status report," she called out, her voice steady despite the history-making moment. "All systems at full power," responded Lee Jae-yuk, her executive officer. "Quantum drive spooling up. Weapons systems online. Shield generators at maximum capacity." He paused, checking another reading. "The AI reports all battle algorithms are functioning at optimal levels." Around the Vengeance, space itself seemed to fill with ships. They rose from hidden bases across Earth, from underwater facilities, from mountain bunkers, from desert complexes buried beneath the sands. Each vessel was a masterpiece of engineering, representing centuries of secret technological development. In orbit around Jupiter, massive hangar doors hidden in the sides of asteroids began to open. The gas giants' moons, long thought to be nothing more than barren rocks, revealed themselves as military bases. Ships emerged from Ganymede, from Europa, from Callisto, each one already moving into precise formation. "Battle Group Theta forming up," Jae-yuk reported, as signals from hundreds of ships pinged on their tactical display. "The Relentless and the Defiant are taking flanking positions." Yuna watched as her battle group assembled. Each ship knew its exact position, guided by AIs that had spent centuries practicing these very maneuvers. The precision was beautiful, almost like a dance among the stars. On Mars, the red planet's surface broke open as silos hidden beneath the dust revealed their contents. Ships rose through the thin atmosphere, their engines painting the sky with blue fire. The carefully maintained illusion of Mars as a barely inhabited research outpost shattered as its true nature as a military fortress was revealed. "Message from Fleet Command," announced Communications Officer Park Min-soo. "All battle groups are to proceed to designated rally points. The countdown for Operation Vengeance has begun." Yuna turned to face her bridge crew. These men and women had trained together since childhood, preparing for a moment they hoped would never come. She saw in their eyes the same mix of emotions she felt: determination, anticipation, and a deep, burning anger for what had happened to New Eden. "Ship-wide address," she ordered, picking up her command microphone. "This is your captain speaking. For generations, we have waited and prepared. We built these ships in secret, trained in silence, all while hoping we would never be needed. But now 5 million of our people lie dead on New Eden, killed by an enemy who thought we were defenseless." She paused, watching as more ships moved into formation around them. The tactical display showed similar gatherings happening throughout the solar system. 700,000 warships, the largest fleet ever assembled, preparing to move as one. They thought they were destroying the helpless colony. Instead, they woke a sleeping giant, Every ship you see around us represents decades of preparation, centuries of dedication. We carry with us humanity's best technology, our strongest weapons, and most importantly, our unbreakable will. The quantum drive hummed louder, signaling its readiness. Across the bridge, status lights turned green as the Vengeance prepared to join the gathering armada. We go now to answer New Eden's final call for help. Though we arrived too late to save them, we carry with us their memory and their vengeance. Battle stations, all hands. The time for hiding is over. As her crew moved to their positions, Una turned back to the viewport. The space around Earth was now filled with ships, their hulls blocking out the stars. Similar scenes played out around Mars, Jupiter, and even distant Saturn. Humanity's full military might, hidden for so long, was finally revealing itself. Battle Group Theta reports ready, Jayuk announced. All ships awaiting your command. Una nodded, her eyes fixed on the stars ahead. Somewhere out there, the aliens who had destroyed New Eden were about to learn they had made a terrible mistake. Take us out, she ordered. Formation Delta 7. Let's show them what humanity can do. The scout ship Starlight drifted silently through the Proxima Centauri system, its stealth systems making it virtually invisible against the backdrop of space. Commander Choi Min-jae stood at the tactical station, his eyes fixed on the sensor readings as his small fleet of 5 ships maintained their hidden positions behind a field of asteroids. For 3 weeks, they had been pushing deeper into unknown space, following the ion trails left by the alien ships that had attacked New Eden. The tension on the bridge was thick enough to cut with a knife. Every crew member knew they would be the first to make contact with the enemy. Movement detected, Han Sueong announced from her sensor station, her voice barely above a whisper, as if the enemy might hear them. Multiple ships dropping out of FTL at bearing 340. The bridge crew watched as 5 crystalline vessels materialized against the starfield. Their black hulls seemed to absorb the light from Proxima Centauri, creating void-like silhouettes that hurt the eyes to look at directly. Vrachnid vessels confirmed, Sueong continued, her fingers dancing across her console. Destroyer class, similar configuration to the ones that hit New Eden. They're running standard patrol patterns. They haven't detected us yet. Min-jae studied the enemy ships through the tactical display. They moved with an arrogant confidence, clearly not expecting any resistance in what they considered their territory. His hand tightened on the edge of his console. Battle stations, he ordered quietly. All ships, prepare to engage. Remember your training. Remember New Eden. Red alert lights bathed the bridge in a soft crimson glow as crew members moved to their combat positions. The stealth ship's weapons, hidden beneath layers of sensor-absorbing material, powered up silently. Weapons ready, reported Lieutenant Park Jimin, her targeting systems locked on the nearest Vrachnid vessel. Quantum torpedoes armed. Point defense grid online. Min-jae took a deep breath. This would be humanity's first real combat engagement with the Vrachnid. Everything they did here would set the tone for the war to come. Execute attack pattern Sigma, he commanded. Target their engines and weapons first. No mercy. The 5 human ships emerged from their hiding place like wolves from shadow. Before the Vrachnid vessels could even register their presence, the first quantum torpedoes were already crossing the space between them. The aliens attempted to raise their shields, but they were too slow. The torpedoes, carrying warheads developed through centuries of secret research, passed through their defensive barriers like they weren't even there. The first Vrachnid ship erupted in a silent explosion as multiple torpedoes struck its engine core. The second and third ships turned to face the threat, bringing their weapons to bear, but the human vessels were already moving to their next attack positions. They're trying to send a distress signal, Sueong reported, her fingers flying across her console to jam the transmission. Not today, Min-jae responded grimly. Show them what Earth can do. The Starlight's main guns opened fire, streams of hyper-accelerated particles tearing through the 4th Vrachnid ship's hull. The alien vessel's crystalline structure shattered. fragments spinning off into space as its atmosphere vented. The fifth and final Vrachnid ship attempted to flee, its engines flaring as it tried to reach FTL speed. A precise shot from one of the human vessels severed its drive section, leaving it drifting helplessly. "Disable their life support," Minji ordered. "Let's see what we're dealing with." Precision fire from the human ships systematically destroyed the Vrachnid vessel's critical systems. Within minutes, the alien crew was forced to abandon ship in emergency pods. "Recovery teams, move in," Minji commanded. "Secure those escape pods. I want prisoners for interrogation." As his crews worked to collect the survivors, Minji opened a channel to Fleet Command. The message he sent was brief but carried the weight of history. First blood drawn. They bleed like anyone else. He turned to look at his bridge crew, seeing the same mix of satisfaction and grim determination on every face. The mystique of the Vrachnid's invincibility had been shattered. Their first real battle had revealed a crucial truth. For all their fearsome appearance and advanced technology, the aliens could be beaten. "Prepare for jump back to the fleet," he ordered. "We have prisoners to deliver and information to share." He paused, looking at the debris field that had once been 5 Vrachnid warships. "And a message to send. Humanity is coming for them." The blue sun of Centauri Prime cast strange shadows across the bridge of the EDF Liberation as General I.M. Ji-hoon studied the tactical displays. The massive fleet carrier hung in high orbit, surrounded by hundreds of support ships. Below them, the planet's surface bore the scars of recent battle. Burning cities and crumbling Vrachnid fortresses. "Another successful liberation, sir," reported Colonel Lee Min-soo, pointing to a section of the map where resistance fighters had just taken control of a major population center. "The local species, the Artheans, they're already organizing cleanup crews." Ji-hoon watched as groups of the tall, 4-armed beings emerged from underground bunkers where they had hidden for generations. The Artheans moved with purpose, their natural engineering skills already being put to use repairing damage from the fighting. 300 years, Ji-hoon said quietly. The Vrachnid enslaved them for 300 years, used them to build weapons and ships, treated them like machinery instead of people. The fleet had discovered this pattern on every world they liberated. The Vrachnid didn't just conquer. They enslaved entire species, using their unique abilities to build their empire. Some races were used for their technical skills, others for their physical strength, all of them treated as nothing more than resources to be used up. "Sir, incoming transmission from the surface," announced Communications Officer Park Kami. "The Arthean resistance leader requests a meeting." Minutes later, Ji-hoon stood in the ship's conference room as the Arthean leader, Kathor, entered. Despite being twice as tall as a human, the alien moved with a grace that belied his size. All 4 of his arms bore the marks of combat, both fresh wounds and old scars. "General," Kathor's translator conveyed his deep, resonant voice. "My people owe humanity a debt we can never repay. For centuries, we thought we were alone in our suffering." "You were never alone," Ji-hoon replied. "We just didn't know you needed help. But now that we do." He activated a holographic display showing the fleet's progress through Vrachnid space. "We're not stopping until every enslaved world is free." The display showed dozens of liberated planets, each one representing another species freed from Vrachnid control. The Artheans with their engineering skills, the Zorans with their natural ability to interface with technology, the Calderans with their tactical brilliance. Each liberation had not only freed a people, but had added new allies to humanity's cause. "The Vrachnid never expected their slaves to rise up," Kathor observed, watching as another section of the map showed a successful uprising. "They believed their control was absolute." "That was their first mistake," Ji-hoon nodded. "Their second was thinking that different species couldn't work together effectively." As if to prove his point, the tactical display updated, showing a combined force of human ships and recently liberated Zoran vessels destroying a Vrachnid battle group. The freed species, rather than simply accepting liberation, were actively joining the fight. "My engineers have studied the weapons you provided," Cathor said. "We can modify them to be even more effective against Vrachnid shields, and we know their construction methods, where to hit their ships to cause the most damage." Jihoon smiled. This was happening across the former empire, each liberated species bringing their unique knowledge and abilities to the fight. The Vrachnid's greatest weapons were becoming their greatest weakness. "Sir," Colonel Minsu interrupted, "new intelligence from the Calderon scouts. They've located another slave world, about 20 light-years from here. Heavy Vrachnid presence." Jihoon studied the data. A planet of beings who could manipulate gravity itself, forced to use their abilities to build Vrachnid mining operations. Their entire civilization reduced to living in work camps. "Ready the fleet," he ordered, "and contact our allies. Let's show the Vrachnid what happens when their slaves become soldiers." As his staff moved to carry out his orders, Jihoon turned back to Cathor. "We started this war to avenge one human colony, but it's become something much bigger. It has become a war of liberation." Cathor agreed, "and the Vrachnid are learning what happens when they unite their enemies against them." The general nodded, watching as ships from a dozen different species formed up alongside the human fleet. What had started as a mission of vengeance had evolved into a crusade for freedom. Every liberated world weakened the Vrachnid and strengthened the alliance against them. "We're not just fighting for New Eden anymore," Jihoon told his assembled staff and allies. "We're fighting for every species these monsters have tormented, and we won't stop until the last chain is broken." Death hung in the space around the Vrachnid homeworld, a dark planet circling an ancient red star. The wreckage of thousands of ships formed an artificial ring around the world, testament to the ferocity of the battle that had raged for 3 days without pause. Admiral Kang Minho stood on the bridge of the EDF Retribution, his flagship's armor scarred from countless battles across Vrachnid space. Through the armored viewports, he watched as another wave of enemy ships rose from the planet's surface to meet the combined fleet of Earth and its alien allies. "Status report," he commanded, his voice steady despite the exhaustion of constant combat. "Enemy fleet at 30% strength," reported Captain Kim Jia. "Their orbital defenses are failing. Ground-based weapons at 60% and falling." She paused as new data flowed across her screen. "Sir, they're moving their civilian ships into the battle line." Minho's jaw tightened. The Vrachnid were now using their own people as shields, a final desperate tactic from a species that had spent millennia doing the same to others. "Signal the fleet," he ordered. "Precision strikes only. We're not them. We don't kill civilians, even theirs." The space around the planet lit up as thousands of ships engaged in close combat. Human vessels, their advanced technology no longer hidden, demonstrated why Earth had spent centuries preparing for this moment. Alongside them, ships crewed by formerly enslaved species brought their own unique abilities to the fight. "Ground assault teams are in position," announced Lieutenant Park Do-yeon. "Colonel Song requests final authorization." Minho nodded. "Give her the green light, and patch me through to her command frequency." Colonel Song Yunji's voice came through clearly despite the interference of battle. "Admiral, my teams are ready. Just give us a corridor to the surface." "You'll have it, Colonel. Good hunting." Thousands of drop pods streaked through the atmosphere, each carrying soldiers in powered armor that represented the peak of human military technology. Colonel Song led from the front, her command pod taking point as they punched through the Vrachnid's remaining air defenses. "Impact in 30 seconds, she called to her troops. "Remember your training. Remember New Eden. Remember every world these monsters enslaved." The pods slammed into the ground around the Vrachnid capital city, their occupants emerging into hell. The alien metropolis was a maze of crystalline towers and geometric structures, each one bristling with weapons. "Echo Squad, take the left flank," Song ordered, her powered armor easily absorbing enemy fire. "Delta Squad, right flank. Alpha with me. We're punching straight through to their command center." The human forces moved with precision born of years of training. Their armor, designed specifically to counter Vracnid weapons, allowed them to advance despite heavy resistance. Behind them came troops from a dozen liberated species, each bringing their own unique abilities to the assault. "They're falling back to the inner city," reported Sergeant Lee Jungo. "Looks like they're trying to set up a final defense line around their leadership bunker." Som watched through her tactical display as the Vracnid forces consolidated their position. The aliens were fighting with the desperation of a species that had never imagined they could lose, now facing exactly that possibility. "All units, converge on the central plaza," she commanded. "Breach teams, prepare for assault. We end this today." Above the planet, Admiral Minho coordinated the space battle with similar precision. The human fleet had formed a sphere around the planet, methodically destroying any Vracnid ship that tried to escape while maintaining careful control to minimize civilian casualties. "Sir," Captain Kim called out, "we're detecting massive energy readings from the surface. They're powering up something big." Minho studied the readings. "Pattern match. Similar to the weapon they used on New Eden, sir, but much larger." "Not this time," Minho said quietly. He opened a channel to Colonel Song. "Colonel, you need to move faster. They're preparing something big." On the ground, Song's forces had reached the central plaza. The Vracnid leadership bunker rose before them, a fortress of black crystal that seemed to absorb light itself. "Understood, Admiral," she responded. "Breach teams, deploy now. All units, maximum effort." The final assault on the Vracnid leadership began as their doomsday weapon powered up beneath the city. Human forces, joined by warriors from every species the Vracnid had enslaved, fought their way floor by floor through the fortress. The battle that would decide the fate of 1,000 worlds had begun. And this time, humanity would make sure justice was served. Sunlight glinted off the black granite walls of the New Eden Memorial as Ambassador Nam Jinho walked his quiet paths. 5 million names stretched into the distance, each one etched with perfect precision. Families came here daily to touch the names of their lost ones, to remember what had been taken and what humanity had done in response. 1 year had passed since the fall of the Vracnid Empire. Their homeworld now stood as a protectorate, its people learning to live without slaves for the first time in their history. The species they had oppressed were free, rebuilding their civilizations with humanity's help. Nam paused at a section of the wall where a mother was showing her young daughter a name. "That was your aunt," the woman said softly. "She was a teacher here." The child reached up to touch the engraved letters, her small fingers tracing each one carefully. In orbit above New Eden, construction crews worked to build the new Galactic Council headquarters. It seemed fitting that this place of tragedy would become a symbol of unity. Ships from dozens of species moved through the system, carrying materials and workers. Each one bore the mark of the new alliance, a rising phoenix, symbolizing the rebirth that had come from the ashes of war. "Ambassador," his aide called quietly, "it's time for the opening ceremony." The great council chamber was filled with representatives from over 50 species. Some floated in atmosphere tanks, others required special gravity settings, but all were equal here. Nam took his place at the podium, looking out at the gathered delegates. 1 year ago, he began, humanity revealed its true strength to the galaxy. We had hidden our capabilities not out of fear, but out of hope that we would never need to use them. When the Vracnid attacked New Eden, they believed they were destroying the helpless colony. Instead, they awakened a force that had prepared for centuries to protect not just humanity, but all who needed protection. The delegates listened intently. Many of them wore the marks of former slavery, scars that would take generations to fade. But in their eyes now burned something new: hope. "We build this council not to rule, but to serve," Nam continued. "Every species here has known suffering. Every world represented has felt the boot of oppression. Together, we will ensure it never happens again." In the space around New Eden, the combined fleet held its position. 700,000 ships, now joined by vessels from allied species, stood ready to defend the peace they had won at such cost. The Earth Defense Force had transformed from humanity's hidden sword to the galaxy's shield. On a dozen formerly enslaved worlds, human engineers worked alongside local species to rebuild. The Artheans were reconstructing their great cities. The Zorans were rediscovering their lost technologies. The Calderans were establishing new defensive networks. Each success was a victory not just for one species, but for all. "Let our alliance serve as both promise and warning," Nam said, nearing the end of his address. "A promise to those who seek peace. You will find friendship here. And a warning to those who would follow the Vrachnid's path. Humanity stands ready. We will not hide our strength again. We will not watch as innocents suffer. We will act." The chamber erupted in approval, each species expressing it in their own way. Some roared, others flashed bioluminescent patterns, still others released pheromones of agreement. Unity in diversity, the very thing the Vrachnid had feared and tried to destroy. As the ceremony concluded, Nam walked to the chamber's great window. New Eden's sun was setting, casting long shadows across the memorial below. A group of Arthean children played in the memorial gardens alongside human kids, their differences forgotten in the universal language of youth. "We did the right thing," his aide said quietly. "Revealing ourselves, fighting the war, building this council." Nam nodded. "We did, and we'll keep doing it." He watched as ships from a dozen worlds moved through the system, their crews working together to build something new. Humanity has found its place in the galaxy, not as conquerors like the Vrachnid, but as guardians. The message was clear to all who saw the rebuilt New Eden. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, bringing not domination but protection, not fear but hope, and they were here to stay. In the memorial below, the names continued their eternal vigil. 5 million voices silenced, but they had awakened something greater, a force for justice that would echo across the stars for generations to come.